Gulu district. A total of over 7,700 women received legal support in the project, which culminated in a national women's forum. Another focus for BarefootLaw has been data privacy and protection, stemming from the 2019 release of the Cyber Laws in Uganda report. The project, empowering human rights defenders with legal and digital fortitude, provided a select group of 119 human rights defenders with knowledge, skills, and fortitude to be legally secure within the laws governing data collection and usage. The cutoff of communities from accessing ordinary means of legal support highlighted gaps in the alternative dispute resolution (ADR) sector. For 62% of our respondents in the BarefootLaw Community Awareness Survey, the pandemic made dispute resolution more difficult, and for 26% of the same respondents, their disputes were caused by the pandemic. Despite being the nearest and most accessible to communities, ADR actors such as community mediators and community-level LCs remain uninformed in legal matters. These play a role in our day-to-day lives, ranging from implementing community health programs, security, judicial functions, among others. Local council courts are also among the top systems where people living within communities in Uganda go to get legal redress, according to our Community Awareness Survey. However, despite all the promise of local council courts, our research has further found that ever since being elected into formal existence in 2018, the members on the local council courts have 1. Received very little support in carrying out their role, 2. Have not been trained in their semi-judicial role, and 3. Have no technical support from government structures.
Zino zemulina okukwatako, zino kyemusobola zikwatako. Naye bwe twatendekebwa n'aba BarefootLaw baatuwabula mu nsonga nnyingi, naddala ez'amaka.
Naffe tuwonyeza ebintu bye twali tuggwamu mu butamanya ng'abakulembeze. Kale bye twali tukola naye ng'ate tubikolera mu mubeera w'amateeka nga tetumanyi.
BarefootLaw, through the Nodes project, has therefore embarked on training and equipping community leaders with legal information and access to our resources.
Nze neebaza Mukama ayatuleetera ekitongole ekyo ekya BarefootLaw, naddala ffe abakulembeze b'ekitundu kino.
Kyannyambako nti obutantuusaako obulabe nga mpisa owa chairman ne ku magezi ge baamuwa ge yakozesa okukola ki okuyingira mu nsonga nga n'obwaleero etuyimiridde nga n'obwaleero munnyongeddeko amagezi amalala.
This is to extend legal support to community members by connecting them to our platforms, persons, and materials, or provide direct frontline responses and support to serve the last-mile communities that do not have access to existing legal support mechanisms or digital technologies.
Okuva olwo twatendekebwa n'aba BarefootLaw, waliwo ekikyuseemu, twayambibwa nnyo mu by'amateeka kubanga baatuwa ebikozesebwa ng'amasimu ne batuwa n'ennamba ze tukubako ez'obwereere ne batuwa n'ebipande bye twateeka mu community. Abantu abalala nabo ne tubayigiriza okukozesa ennamba ezo. Wabaddewo okwanguya mu mirimu gino kubanga nabo bangu, buli we tuweereza babibuuzo batwanukula mu bwangu ne batugayidinga.
With our support, we have helped over 900,000 people more willing to take on these legal problems that they have in their lives in order to resolve them. We have managed to help a lot of people who were previously either not going to deal with their legal problem or who had given up on it entirely. So we have helped mothers who have been evicted from land to reclaim it. We have been able to help people whose land has been grabbed by greedy relatives through succession quarrels to be able to lay a claim and work towards reclaiming it. We have also been able to help people who did not know about will writing to make proper wills so that their family could be protected.
BarefootLaw is working with the LCs the LLCs are now conversant with what? The nodes application, and they are using it. But now it is limiting other stakeholders who don't have it.
In the future, we are looking at more grassroots interactions. We are looking at working with leaders at the community level, representatives, and we are also building up robust partnerships with organizations at the grassroots. We look at improving our technological capacity so that we can handle even more cases and we can help people resolve the disputes that they have. So we are looking at a broader and more in-depth application of our services so that we can help everyone that needs help, especially if they are underserved and in a rural community, whether or not they directly have access to the internet or technology. We are looking to reaching out and serving them.
I thank the BarefootLaw staff for their resilience through these times. We were forced to go to the gutters, to the trenches, and yet here we are. But most importantly, I thank the BarefootLaw beneficiaries and users for all the resilience they've shown and the trust they've had in the law as a tool to resolve their problems, even when all hope seemed to be lost. We look to extending this service beyond Uganda, across the region, across Africa, to meet our goal, which is to have this service available to 50 million people across Africa by 2030, because that's when the current development cycle comes to an end. Every day we remind ourselves about the service we are providing to people. I don't want to forget that, to people. And this would have not been possible without the support of our partners that have been with us on this journey, that learned with us during the lockdown, and will continue supporting and learning with us as we move towards our big, hairy, audacious goal. I thank you.
De autoverzekering van Inshared is als beste getest. Een topautoverzekering en een lage premie. Dat is goed voor uw auto en goed voor uw...
Thank you very much. The next session, to put all this video into one single word, someone who brought all this idea together 10 years ago in his law school hostel, someone whom I call a mentor, someone who also invited me on this journey 7 years ago as a young man leaving Makerere University to join them on this journey of legal innovation in Uganda. Let me invite on stage Gerald Abila, the founder of BarefootLaw. Gerald is a laureate and fellow for his outstanding contribution. He's a laureate and fellow of Echoing Green, Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation, Reina Ano Feno of Mulago Foundation. In 2018, he was named by the American Bar Association the Legal Rebel. He's also, in 2018, was one of the leading consultants and strategists in regards to legal innovation by the Law Dragon. I invite you, Gerald Abila, to give your speech.
He forgot I'm still a human being. These days when being human is really becoming tricky. Yeah. So I'll try today to just tell a story of what BarefootLaw has been through, and I'll try to share thoughts as well as I tell this story, because I believe access to justice is access to peace in the long run. There is no other way to achieve peace than through justice. I mean, justice may not be perfect, but it's the best tool that we have to achieving a lot of this. With Barefoot Law, through the video, our summary is that we envision a world, and this is interesting because we came up with this. Now that we're looking at 10 years, for me it's also a journey through the past. We came up with this in 2014, and there's something interesting that we put here. We envision a world in which real and virtual, we envision a real, Barefoot Law envisions real and virtual worlds in which every person, natural, legal, or electronic. This is important. Now it's more important than it was then. Readily has access to justice and to the law to empower themselves and their communities to thrive. And of course the mission is to get the law to protect vulnerable persons across Africa. I think we're not ambitious enough. That should have been across the world, I think. And of course the problem, as you saw in the video, is that people are located so far away from justice convergence points. This distance can be physical, it can be psychological, it can be social, it can be economic. That creates a distance between people and justice. And this has affected 90% of people in many countries. This was, I think in 2008, 2019. I suspect after COVID, that number has increased, but there's no study to that so far. 5 billion of these are not able to resolve their justice needs. And in Uganda, that is 8 in 10 people that have such a problem. Our big idea is tech-enabled legal support, law and tech, to try and resolve these problems. The approach that you saw in the video is that we get the law, we simplify it, and then we disseminate it. We broadcast it through different platforms. Some are tech, some are non-tech, and I'll explain. That generates conversations to people that receive these messages, and they reach out to us through the same platforms pro bono. And our team of trained lawyers guides them towards resolution. That's the Barefoot Law model. I'll come back to this in my presentation, but it's the different channels through which the law goes out and comes in. That's our office, and this is one of the remote offices. I'll explain as well as we move on. That's one of the things that we're doing. It wasn't in the impact video, but again, it has taken us 10 years to figure this out, and I'll explain. The impact so far is about 970,000. And today's talk is not about Barefoot Law. It's about Barefoot Law, but the side of Barefoot Law I want us to focus on is failing forward. These are lessons that we've learned over the past 10 years that have sort of defined who we are, and we're hoping to make many of these mistakes again as we move forward for the next 10 years. This is an interesting picture that for me captures all our craziness. That thing that I showed you, this here, this is the Barefoot Law box. It's an AI-powered system that is managed by a non-lawyer, and it's deployed to a rural community. It's solar powered as well. Now, to get this to this community was a bit of a hassle. There are things we knew and there are things that we didn't know. We didn't know, for instance, that you cannot get a 40-foot carrier, a trailer to carry a 40-foot container anywhere outside of Kampala. And that's for me, that captures the craziness of Barefoot Law. So we had to get a 20-foot trailer to carry this 40-foot thing that eventually fell off as we were putting it at site. But eventually it has worked. In 1 year, we've resolved over 3,000 cases through that. But what does it feel like? In the past 10 years, I'm always asked, what does it feel like to be an innovator, to try and think differently? So I tend to write down some of my thoughts. This I wrote down in 2017 or 2018. Things were just a bit too difficult. And I often answer them, I say, well, it often feels like being born with 2 left feet, incapacitated, and then thrown in a snake-infested Angolan minefield, and then told to dance the tango with angels, but sometimes with demons. It's a bit difficult to tell. While smiling and singing them praises, with the hope that someday we will succeed. If we succeed, they call it resilience, but if we fail, they call it statistics. And
that for me is a bit of a story. And in terms of our failure, I'll share some lessons in these 6 broad areas of failure. From the model to measuring impact, to finance, to the tech, to systems change, and of course to our ethos, because Barefoot Law is an evolving, I would say, philosophy in a way. The Barefoot Law model started with an idea that Robert mentioned, me as a law student. Started off with an SMS platform, and this was in Uganda about 2012, of June in 2012. As a law student, I started sharing a lot of things I would learn in class with an SMS platform that I had. And then eventually the cost became too much. So I shut down the SMS platform, and that's the time social media was picking up in Uganda. You had only 5 in 100 people that had access to internet. And using social media, we opened up the first Facebook page. After about 6 months, we realized 94% of our users were men in urban areas. And that wasn't different from national statistics, because it was about 6% women that had access to the internet by then. So that meant we had to, our failure was we've come up with a system that we think is going to be inclusive, and it's instead perpetuating the problem. So we decided to redo the model, and that meant we had to find where most of the underserved were, which meant they were out of capital cities, and many of them did not have technology gadgets. That was the basis of Barefoot Law. And so we got a bit of, we started, I would say, downgrading the tech to be able to enhance on the usage. From having only a tech-based platform, an internet-based platform, we brought in the radios, we brought in the SMSs, we brought in voices. Now the voices are interesting, and I'll mention that again in the tech. Providing the service online, and of course we have the law notes. These are tech-enabled people in communities with tabs that those that don't have gadgets can go and access. And we had the law box, the one that I showed you, and we work with partners as well to deploy our software, so that those that cannot access Barefoot Law can go to the partners and access us. And that, for me, within about, I think, 3 years, we've increased that number. I need to see what the real statistics are, the latest statistics, but it's about over 30% now of our users are women. And this varies. You'll find for many of the platforms, like for the box, women are about 60%, while for the fully internet-based, the number of women is much lower. Another area in which we failed, I wouldn't say we failed, but the world failed, was when it came to impact measurement. The first time I think I had impact was a call from Hill. We won the Innovating Justice Award and received a call from Hill, and were asked now to start figuring out how the impact is and to start working on the model, and I'd never heard of what impact was. I was doing my thing and I was counting how many people I'd reached, but that wasn't impact. And then when I understood impact, when the Barefoot Law team understood what impact was, we came to realize that under SDG 16, about 2015, 2016, impact measurement was more from the supply side. So they were not measuring impact from the user side, because they had never factored in, as they were developing the SDGs, that a service could come that provides access to justice directly to people. So around that time, they were measuring access to justice, or at least the indicators from how many prisons were built, how many prisoners have been released, how many policemen are there, but no one was measuring it from the other side. So on this, we were a bit stubborn, and we stuck to the way we were measuring impact, because we do not do litigation. And at this stage, we are not acting in any way with the formal justice system, because we thought the formal justice system itself was a bit of a problem. So our service was more towards the user side. Good thing is, eventually the world, I think, realized this, because a few years later they revised the way that indicator is measured to now cater for access to justice, or at least impact measurement from the user side, which I think is really progress. Another way in which we sort of failed and learned was when it came to finance.
BarefootLaw was an idea. It wasn't an organization. It was just an idea that sort of came to the mind. And around that time, when BarefootLaw was founded, there was no such thing as impact investment in Uganda. All funding was project-based, especially if you are in the legal sector. So for us, the idea was to fund BarefootLaw would sit down, spend sleepless nights to write proposals and send to funders hoping to receive grants to execute projects. The problem was we had no idea what BarefootLaw was or what BarefootLaw would be. The idea was evolving. So if you ask me where BarefootLaw would be in 2 years' time, so that I put it down in a proposal, I couldn't. So because of that, many of our applications were turned down. So the easiest way that we saw was to go for awards. So we had to be exceptional with the idea, and we had to keep evolving for us to be able to win awards in excellence. This is one of the first awards we won. It was from the Uganda Communications Commission. It was an innovation award, and that came with 10,000. So from 2012 to 2014, that's the budget for BarefootLaw was basically 10,000. And this, with our current budget for then, lasted us almost a year. And then when this award brought that money, we started going for many more awards, including the HEAL grant that came with about 20,000. So the good thing with award money is it enabled us to be so flexible in what we did. And so we're able to work on improving the model. This, for us, was where the R&D money came from. So we had to innovate around the awards. The challenge with this is that we had to always keep innovating. Otherwise, today's innovation is tomorrow's, it's a best practice. It's not an innovation anymore. So we had to keep changing. One thing about finance that we did, it was the first side of BarefootLaw that we professionalized. So we're all straight out of university students. About 2014, 2015, when we got this money, the first thing we did was to open up a bank account and to get financial help from an expert. So the first hire, no, the second hire that we had was for a qualified finance person. And that helped a lot. So if there are any innovators here, finance is really key and critical. Now this, I could go on and on and on. I think our biggest failures have been in tech. But again, also it's the most exciting, and it's the most interesting. One of the biggest failures with our technology, like I mentioned, was coming up with an internet-based system in a country where 5 in 100 people have access to internet. So for me, that was a failure. And innovating around that, or at least the lesson we learned from that was that sometimes the most impactful things are not necessarily the coolest. So you will find that you had social media was big by then. This was before Cambridge Analytica. Social media was still good. And everyone was using it for good, and it was being heralded as something that's going to transform the world. And then we bring in radios. People have seen radios since, I think, Alexander Graham Bell. It's not an innovation, but it was more impactful in rural communities than with tech. Another thing was, I remember once we did, to get to those that don't know how to read and write, we set up a voice system, a sort of voice call system that does robot calls. Robot calls are so everywhere, you'll find robot calls, but in Uganda by then it was still something novel. So we set up a system that does robot calls and receives questions through that robot call system that we set, and it had about 5 languages by then. But these calls eventually became so monotonous that people started understanding that these are robot calls. So they would just listen and hang up, listen and hang up. But one thing we did was we started making a bit of errors in the phone calls to not make them perfect. And the length of listenership increased because to err is human, or to error is human. I don't know what the real word is. But to make mistakes is human. So if the call is perfect, the length of listenership was lower than on an imperfect call, which was an interesting lesson. Another lesson we had here was in developing the AI system, our Winnie AI system. So when these questions come through, the first place they go to is that artificial lawyer, who then provides a sort of guided answer to a natural person lawyer, who then uses that guide to provide a better response. So there's a human loop in between. But when we started programming Winnie, there were so many things, and I think we are still far from that, including with LLMs. We are still very far. The difference between us and the tech is, I think, in terms of consciousness. We are not yet at that level, and yet to interpret the law, you need that level of consciousness. And one example we had here was when we asked Winnie what wife purchase is. So someone sent a question, what is wife purchase? And what's widow inheritance? And to her, widow inheritance was the rights of a widow to inherit from a deceased husband. But in Ugandan context, widow inheritance is when the surviving relative of the husband takes on a widow upon death of the husband. So the machine totally flipped it in a different context and provided a correct answer, but totally different. So because of that ability to put these questions to local context, we are still a bit far. The technology, I think, is exciting, but we're still a bit far. I think we have about 10 years to get to a point where we will have an artificial lawyer that provides responses. So pay attention to it. There's a lot of development there, but there's still a lot of things to learn in terms of that. One other thing with technologies, there's so many lessons I could share. But when you see this box here, this is a shipping container that we just converted, cut it up, put a screen, our software, put solar panels and took it to a remote area. This place that we took the first box to is really hot. Temperatures there are about 35, 38 degrees centigrade. And so we faced a problem. We did not have money to insulate. And so the only solution to overcome that heat was to put a roof. And for us from Kampala, from the capital city, having a grass rooftop is something cool. Because you will go to hotels and you go to safari parks and they have grass. One of the options we suggested for here was to put a grass rooftop. But there was a blowback from the beneficiaries that we served, because to them, grass is a sign of poverty. So if you put a grass roof, then it shows the quality of service that you're providing is also something that's poor in quality, so no one would come. So because of that, we had to put a tin roof. That was one lesson. The other problem again with heat was one of the solutions we came up with was AC. It's obvious. A shipping container heat, you would put AC. But then again, there was blowback from the public because according to them, they live in that area. They've lived in that area for thousands of years, and they've never had AC as a solution. So why should AC be a solution to a heating problem that you're facing? And so there was bound to be blowback there. So that's why you see we ended up cutting this here, because no one was going to come in an air-conditioned place in a rural area to access services. It just could not fit. So, oh yeah, something else, an important lesson here is we came up with a software that runs this system in Kampala, and we went and deployed this. And the most novel thing with that software, it's the idea was that someone in that locality would come, someone with a legal problem would come, make a booking, and the system would look for a lawyer that specialized in that field, that has the language for that area, and automatically schedule a meeting with them. So you'll come today, go. All the box operator would do is to enter your details, and then an SMS is, a lawyer is notified, and you'll come back tomorrow at, let's say, 2 p.m. and be able to talk to a lawyer. And that is the system that we deployed. It did not work. The reason why it did not work is people are coming from far. No one is going to come twice. Come to set up an appointment, go do my things, then come the next day to talk to a lawyer. It did not work. The first thing we got rid of was that system, the booking system, and that was, it totally never worked. To overcome that, we went back to using a counter book. So we'd use a counter book and then call a lawyer and set it up. Eventually, we just removed the entire booking system. And that's, again, problems. For me, it was part of a wider problem that everyone faces when it comes to technology and deploying it in rural areas. So it's something important that people really need to be mindful of. The habits for many of those in this area is they will go and dig in a garden and then start accessing services like this from midday onwards. So us opening at 9 was also really not working. 9 to 5 simply would not work. So we had to also be flexible in that regard. So that's just something for me. Again, it shows how some of this software we develop in the comfort of our offices, but then the usage, and nothing could have revealed this. Another interesting lesson here, there are so many, is that if you notice here, there's a tree in this picture. So the best location we had to put this first box was where there was a tree. 30 years ago, I think one of the local guys there went and tried to cut down that tree, and he was banished from that community. But then the tree then had, I think half of it was cut, and our fear was that this tree would fall on the box. Each time it would rain or there was wind, the tree would really sag. Cutting that tree, I don't know, it was for me one of the most interesting, because no amount of visits to this site had told us, or at least had showed us, that cutting this tree would be a problem. It's only after we deployed the technology that we realized cutting this tree would be a problem, and the processes that it would take to remove that tree. The council had to sit, the environment officer had to write a notice. And it was eventually the council that came about a year later and is like, you know what, this tree is a danger to our service. Why don't you allow us to cut it? Because they had seen the value in the service, they offered to cut the tree. So they passed a resolution and had the tree cut. And that's why you see in this, there is no tree. The lesson there is, sometimes it's just better to try. If you have any tech software, anything, just take this down, try it out. There are things you're going to find out that you may never in a million years have envisioned when you're developing this. And yeah, in terms of tech as well, and I'll just mention this and I move on. You will never understand inequalities in the world unless you understand inequalities in tech. We've tried, I think, for the past 5 or 6 years to advance or to upgrade the technologies that BarefootLaw has. Oh yeah, there's a matching band. So we've tried to advance the technologies that we've had. Winnie, the AI system that I mentioned, it's advanced now, it speaks. We've advanced on that front. But getting Winnie, again, thanks to the DRK, I was able to move to, I think in 1 year I moved to San Francisco about 4 times, to and fro, 4 times in about 4 or 5 months to try and meet all these guys, the Googles, thanks to the KBF as well. And I think that sort of raised eyebrows. Why would someone from a country like this be coming to San Francisco for software like this? It just was unheard of. And it got me, I think, in many in some blacklist because of accessing that software. We developed this software with Imperial College in London, the first version using PhD students. And so I remember going down to London for the launch, and the immigration held me back because they just could not understand why would someone like this be interested in software like this. So I was detained until they had to get clarification from Imperial that indeed a project like this existed, and that indeed it was our idea and we're coming to do a launch from Uganda to London. But that was, I think, half of the story, because eventually when we got the software, you realize a lot of what exists does not work for us. Getting this software there's a lot of excitement with large languages and things like that, but it's for us really, it's an inequality, because first, we can't host it. Secondly, it does not understand. We're trying to teach this Winnie to speak, but it doesn't understand the accent. So we've never gone beyond 60% in terms of accuracy. So my fear, again, going forward, is that many of these tech inequalities are going to perpetuate inequalities that we're trying to overcome. And everyone is wowed by this tech, but for me, I see a bit of fear, because the distribution is not designed for inclusivity. That's the other half. The first half is access. The second half is you'll access it and then it just cannot work for your local context. So I think that is an area that needs more work. And then, of course, systems change. Systems change for me is an interesting area, because in the past 10 years, when we started BarefootLaw in 2012, the legal innovation landscape there was one person here, one person there. It wasn't really hard. In fact, technically, when we started BarefootLaw, it was illegal, because we were breaking so many laws in terms of how lawyers are supposed to act. And because of that, there was a lot of pushback from the system, especially on the legal side. So what did we do? We ran to the tech side. So while the Ministry of Justice was pushing back, the Ministry of IT was embracing us. So in the first 5 years of BarefootLaw, we were a tech company. Only then, when we understood what the model was and the idea, did we start engaging the legal side of things by showing them what the data does, because we had done a lot of data that they needed, and of course showing them the benefits of what technology will do to get access to justice possible. And today it's a no-brainer. If you're not using digital technology for access to justice, it's just. So in the past 10 years for me, and I'm sure there are countries that are still like this. So if any of you here are innovators and you're facing challenges in the legal side, go to the tech side, they'll embrace you. If you face challenges in the tech side, go to the legal side, they'll protect you. So just keep cherry picking and seeing which works for you. That enabled us to survive to a point where everyone saw the benefits and they started working with us going forward. One important thing that we've failed at, and a lesson that we learned, was BarefootLaw was made up of peers. So the first BarefootLaw team, and many of them are still around, were people that I knew, that I'd grown up with or had gone to school with. So if you looked at our values from 2012 to about 2014, 15, our first value was first we are friends. You know, we're keeping it techy and keeping it cool. But then afterwards, we realized first we are friends as a value is a bit, it's not professional. Because then the way we interacted with each other was as friends and not as professionals, and yet the organization was starting to professionalize. So that meant we changed our values about 2016. So the first value is first we are professional, And then Where Friends is still there, but it's far. So these are part of our new values. We are professional. The law is our passion. We pursue improvement relentlessly, and of course we listen. So this one here, for me, was an interesting change in the way we look at things. But again, that takes me back to the innovation again around technology that you have to be mindful of. And it's a lesson that we learned. When you look at the Barefoot Law logo for me, it's a logo that I developed to show a law in its purity. So it's when you're going to many of these, when you're born, you're barefoot. When you're going to your parents' room, you're barefoot. When you're going to a place that's sacred, it's barefoot. So for me, if you needed the law, it should be given to you in its purest form, without any sort of, and the foot is a foot that's moving forward. So that's a law to take us forward to where we hope to achieve our development goals. But when we took this down again to the community and we asked them, explain what Barefoot Law is, what we do, and then we receive feedback from them. For them, the logo is a law for people like them who are barefoot. And so our idea of what Barefoot Law is was different from the idea of those that access our services. Then it got us thinking again. Majority of what we did was prototype names. This thing is called a Barefoot Law box. But to the community, this is a small court that they access justice. So to them, it's a small court. To us, it's a Barefoot Law box. Now for them, they come to access justice. For us, we give out the law. So there's a bit of a difference in how they perceive our services to what we sort of came up with. So the lesson for us is that many times you'll have these things that you develop in-house, but it only takes, it needs to be put in practice and let it evolve organically for you to capture what exactly it is, especially when it comes to deploying technology to rural areas. That has, of course, affected, or at least redefined what we see of ourselves, and it has redefined our ethos as an organization. The model, I already spoke about that, impact measurement, the finance, the tech, the systems change, and of course our ethos. But it's 10 years of Barefoot Law. What's coming next? I honestly believe, in terms of Barefoot Law, we're hinged on two things, that's law and tech. So our future is around the law and around technology. I still believe, as I've always believed, that by 2030, the law should be ubiquitous. It should be as easy to access a lawyer as it should be to pray to God. I'll just sit in a corner and say a prayer. I'll go to a shrine somewhere and say a prayer. It should be as easy to access a lawyer as it is to access God. And secondly, I think by 2030, our software, what we call Winnie, or someone else's software, will be as accurate or more accurate than a human being lawyer. We are almost there, but I think we still have some years to go. But I honestly think by 2030, many of the tasks that you do, including complex, comprehensive tasks, will be done by an artificial lawyer. In any case, ours will have gotten there. I'm not sure about the rest. But by 2030, Winnie will be as accurate or more accurate than a human being lawyer. If you ask me where we are, we're at about 0.5%. So we still have about 99 point something to go, but we're there. This is something I wrote when, I remember when we clocked 10 years at Barefoot Law, we had a small party at office. And when the pictures of the party came out, I was looking confused. I was confused in those pictures because honestly, I didn't believe we had survived. It was a bit too much of processing for me. So I wrote this down. It's a poem for me for Barefoot Law at 10.
I started BarefootLaw 10 years ago. They called me crazy, they called me mad. We grew BarefootLaw, they called us crazy, they called us mad. 10 years later, they all follow our footsteps. They call us crazy, they are all mad. We are normal, and yet are crazy, and yet we are mad. We define the new normal, and yet we are crazy, and yet we are mad. We went from a candle flame to a star, and yet we are still crazy, and yet we are still mad. We went from a star to a constellation. They still call us crazy, they still call us mad. We are scared in BarefootLaw. They call us crazy, they call us mad. There's a section I left, but I think it's not appearing here. But in this thing, we're all crazy now, and we're all mad. And hopefully with this madness, we'll be able to achieve our goals for 2030. Those are some of the reflections, and I hope we can have a wonderful engagement after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Please give him another round of applause. Yeah, maybe it makes sense for you to start, because the next session, just to put everything to, to put everything in one package, on the theme of the day, building resilience, failing forward, building resilience through innovation. We've invited experts who have been in this field, who have, over the years, been in legal innovation, and they've basically been successful through, resilience and the work that they do. So allow me to introduce our panelists of today. Lisa Jordan. Lisa Jordan is the Managing Director of the DRK Foundation. She's well known in the field of philanthropy and for leading foundations toward greater impact. She's worked in governments, NGOs, and foundations. Notable examples: she has served as a senior executive with Poticas, Bernard Van Lee, Bang Information Center, and the Ford Foundation. Just today for our panel, Lisa this afternoon just came from San Francisco. She has worked in New York, worked in Washington, Amsterdam, Tokyo, Brussels, and she's currently based in The Hague. Lisa Jordan, thank you so much for coming. Please. And the next panelist is Kanan Dhru, who is our friend. She's a lecturer of legal technology at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. She's an innovator herself. She has been in the field of legal innovation for the past, for a decade now, developing and researching legal innovation. She has researched, written, and held numerous talks on legal innovation, law, the future of law and technology. Kanan, welcome. And then lastly, Gerald will also join the panel discussion. And what we're trying to achieve today is Gerald already sort of gave the icebreaker on legal innovation. And I'll just start with you, Lisa. Over the years, BarefootLaw has received support from different individuals and foundations. We wanted to get your perspective on how philanthropy has evolved in recent years in regards to impact investment, and sort of what opportunities are available for legal innovators, so generally social innovators.
Is this on? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah? No, it's good. I figured it out. It's technology. Thanks for having me. First of all, it's a real honor to be up here and to hear the full story of BarefootLaw. which DRK has been supporting for 3 years, 4 now? 4. This is our 4th. So the first thing I want to say, I guess, about philanthropy and rule of law is that philanthropy as a sector does not invest enough in rule of law and access to justice. As a sector, when you look across both new philanthropy and old, there are probably 6 foundations worldwide, and I bet everybody in this audience can name them, that actually support rule of law work. One of them is the Ford Foundation, which I spent 10 years with. One of them is Atlantic Philanthropies, which is a spend-down foundation. Adesium does a little bit of work in this area here in the Netherlands, but in general, I think it's an underfunded area. And unfortunately, the advent of impact investment, which is a new tool in the philanthropic toolbox, hasn't been eye-opening for rule of law organizations. And why? Because folks who are looking at impact investing are looking for scalable models, they're looking for technology innovations, they're looking mostly at issues around sustainability and not at issues around the underlying fundamentals of democracy. And if there's a time in history where we need to have more folks paying attention to the underlying fundamentals of democracy, it's today. Literally today, yesterday, and the day before. Because we can see that those are slipping away from us. So, though I know that you will ask me later a little bit about what are impact investors looking for, what I would probably say, those foundations that are moving towards impact investment are, the trend is to invest more in environmental issues and sustainability than it is in social issues. And that's because there's technology that lends itself quite easily to solving environmental problems, and there's not a lot of technology thus far that has been applied against rule of law. And BarefootLaw stands out and amongst others who have actually used technology for access to legal services and justice. We have about 20 organizations out of 220 in our portfolio that in one way or another are scaling a legal service. And most of those organizations are scaling a legal service through some kind of technological innovation. So the news is not great from philanthropy in terms of it being a good place for organizations to turn to, and especially when they start to hit scale, then it becomes even more difficult, which we can talk about a little bit later.
Thank you. Kanan, from what I hear, from what Lisa is trying to say, there's not enough technology or sort of innovation that links with technology within the legal sector to support you. Obviously work in this field and also do academic research in this field. What are some of the emerging trends within the field of law that you sort of reckon will shape the future?
Thank you so much, firstly, for having me here. It's wonderful to be here. In terms of the legal innovations and scale, quickly responding to what Lisa said, especially when the scale starts happening, and this is based on the research that I did when I was working at the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law on game changers and looking at some of the scalable models in the area of justice delivery. There has to be, pivoting around the kind of business models. How do you raise funding? Do you create, just the dependencies on philanthropy? Do you create a market tested model? So that is something that starts to build in and becomes critical if you want to reach a large number of people. And I'm very curious to also hear from BarefootLaws' experience. When it comes to technology, something very interesting starts to happen. In a way, technology creates a level playing field. it kind of starts to include a lot of people in the conversation. And you mentioned even in the video that women were not kind of as active on social media, and then you had to kind of innovate around the kind of technology that will bring more people, especially women, into the conversation. So it kind of gives that leverage to include those who would generally not engage in the conversations around access to justice. It gives you different tools to reach them. But then oftentimes, and again I'm very interested to hear from you, with technology what starts to happen is that you start to kind of fill the digital divide, then access to justice divide. So then you have to make sure that everybody has the phone or everybody has the access to internet. So how can we stay on course of just focusing on the justice issue or doing that balance in a nice way so that kind of the problem gets solved? Now to answer your question, sorry, around the technologies and tools, because I teach legal technology, we've seen so much interest from the students in the last couple of years, if not more, to learn about, especially from law students, that they want to learn about how can they code basic of Python, for example, or Prolog, or basic technology, how AI works, because these are the very important things that they'll have to adapt. Another interesting point, and we are figuring it out along with other universities, should we allow ChatGPT to be used in the examination or assignments? And maybe, we are tilting towards yes indeed, because the job market is going to expect them to. So similarly, kind of embracing the technology is important, but creating the right guardrails and right kind of regulations is then interesting to have. And I think that can have a, huge impact in the access to justice scale, if we kind of adapt it nicely or rightly to the systems that can leverage with sharing the information to people. So I hope I'm answering the question.
Yeah, I think you put it very nicely, and I will sort of push the question also to Gerald, because from what I hear Kanan is talking about is that we should not focus so much on the technology, but also the end goal of the justice. So technology as a launch pad to address access to justice gap. BarefootLaw obviously is one case that has survived for 10 years. There are not so many examples. And right now, the organization is scaling. And why is it very important to be in a place like The Hague?
Thanks, Robert, for that question. It's nice to listen to those submissions. Before I come to that question, there's something you mentioned, Lisa, and I'll use, with 10 years now, I think I have enough hindsight to rely on personal experiences. The thing with BarefootLaw, for instance, is for the first 2 or 3 years, we had no bank account. I had to take up a teaching job. I was paid $150 a month. My other colleague had to take up a job at Parliament as a consultant. He was paid about $100 a month. That was enough to meet the internet costs and the costs of someone sitting in as a receptionist. We could have gone like that for so many years and met BarefootLaw's budget using our own funding. Then you get to the second phase, which is where the BRKs and other partners come in. Now there, you rely on small philanthropy still. You're still a small organization, you're fast growing, you're just at that point to scale. And so these budgets are good enough to get you to that point. And you will survive that point. But then you get to a point that I call, and I think it's now a common term, the valley of death, where all your resources and all your networks in the sector are not enough to carry the burden that the organization has become. And usually, I think at that point, the organization then tanks. In our situation, I think, access to justice in the Global South, for an organization like ours, I would say it takes about 5 to 7 years. Between 5 to 7 years is where this circus starts happening. And after that, you get to a point of anxiety. Because now, myself also, when I look at how much we are paying the government in taxes at the end of the month, I get scared. Because it's the running cost of the organization mean that we need to get a lot of funding, and yet the SDG 16 generally is not well funded. So many game changers, I would say, would reach that point and either stay stagnant or start declining. So, and that's where you mentioned you need to start pivoting. We're not yet there, but I think it's something I'm starting to resonate with a lot more, to other services that are not necessarily core justice services, but are incidental to the services that you offer. It's interesting what you mentioned with technology. I think we need to be deliberate in the innovations. And I call it, like for us now, scaling for BarefootLaw is to scale in breadth, which is we need to open up in more countries, but also in depth, meaning in the areas in which we operate, we need to go a lot more deeper. So the challenge with that is, when you look at the available tech, for instance, social media and SMSs, the cost per beneficiary is very tiny and insignificant. When you go to, for instance, now providing services using voice, because of inclusivity, the budget has to increase. The deeper you go, the more the budget, like the shipping container, it enables someone without a phone to access legal services. But getting that shipping container there is not something anyone. So because of those resources, innovators are again limited. And for us at BarefootLaw, that's one of the reasons we opened up in The Hague as well. In part because we think it's easier to access the justice ecosystem from here than it would be in Uganda. So there are lessons we've learned over the past 10 years that we think we can all share to make access to justice a reality. Some lessons also around funding, and that's why we chose this theme today. And we're just one of thousands or tens of thousands of innovations in SDG 16 in the global south that are happening. Honestly, if we deliberately went and got those guys and gave them a platform like here, we would solve this debacle that we're all facing. At the current rates, we're not meeting our goals under SDG 16. We're not going to meet them. So any conference you go to and guys are talking SDG 16, chances are very high they're bullshitting. And that's the honest truth. The thing with this bullshitting is, again, pardon my French, is we're going to meander and pass time, and then we'll reach 2029, 2028, and we start talking a post-SDG world. And why we need to include access to justice, because we didn't pay attention to it in the beginning, just like we excluded it in the MDGs, because we're not funding it enough. And then we start funding, and then some other problems, and still. So there are so many examples in the global south that if we got and put them somewhere like here, give them a platform like this, would solve a number of these challenges. For us, in part, that's why BarefootLaw at 10 deliberately chose to sort of come here to share these lessons, but also to highlight a number of innovations that are taking place in the global south, specifically in access to justice and human rights.
Thank you, Gerald. Yeah, from what I hear is that we have to find more BarefootLaw or find a lot of different innovations within different sectors of development based in the global south who know these issues, who work on some of this.
Maybe if I can interject, sorry. We don't need to find them. They're already there, waiting to be found. We just need to remove the barriers that are preventing them from coming to a place like this. There are so many barriers, I tell you, I don't even want to go into that are preventing so many BarefootLaws. Just remove the barriers, make the playing field a little bit more level, and you'll see how these thousands of organizations will thrive. They're waiting to be found. Yeah. Or they're ready. I wouldn't say we need to go out and...
Yeah, very interesting. I'm thinking around if a young legal professional, and kind of this is because it's a field that you're in, how can a young legal scholar sort of prepare to engage with some of these current evolving technological trends if they want to get engaged in legal innovation?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, I think both to Lisa's and Gerald's point, there is a need for more justice innovations. They are out there, they need to be found. But at the same time, they start pivoting at times where, you know, there is more need for justice solutions. Shall I? Yes, maybe I think it's off. Perfect. So very quickly, just to kind of answer about the need for justice innovations, they are out there, they need to be found, but they pivot too soon at times because they feel there is a huge fear, the valley of death. And because of that, there's a huge disservice that happens to access to justice and rule of law related causes, because I've seen some of the most interesting and innovative ideas around solving the legal challenges, then also starting to do so many other things, which is totally understandable. They also have to survive. And you know, anyway, it is very difficult for startups to kind of scale in most sectors, access to justice and law even more, because at the end of the day, law and justice is the monopoly of the government. And you know, there is only so much you can do around access to justice and legal aid centers, which are anyway going to be free. So what extra do you offer as a startup which can add more value? So again, technology kind of comes very handy. And then to kind of go to the question around, you know, what can legal scholars do? At the end of the day, there's a huge aspirational value around technology. Everybody wants to kind of, you know, adapt and change and move and kind of get to that level where they can compete globally. As you said, you know, if they can get to platforms like these from the global south, amazing things can happen. But that kind of barrier is still there for them. Saying we need to, of course, innovate around online and offline solutions, but keeping in mind that there is an aspirational value. People would want to have the same kind of laptops people in San Francisco uses, for example. Why not? And everybody should have the access to the same technology. And therefore, assuming that, yeah, of course, it will always stay that way. I mean, maybe I'm making it controversial. We need both very much. But good solutions are those which can make both online and offline, like BarefootLaw, kind of using high technology, but then going to every person that matters, making it truly people-centered. So legal scholars who want to do something in this area, and they will have to keep in mind that the world is changing very fast. We cannot stay away from conversations around AI or machine language, and making sure that they are adapted to the need and the solution that needs to be found. So not creating problems where there is no solution where there is no problem. But design thinking, asking people what they want and kind of really listening to them and building from there is something that the lawyers oftentimes forget. They have it too easy to make a lot of money with the traditional brick and mortar business model. So really pushing themselves. I hope that this new wave of conversations around AI can bring them out of their comfort zones a little bit and push them to create better solutions for people. That needs to happen everywhere in the world. Lawyers are kind of hesitated upon anywhere, global north, global south, all included. So more change needs to happen in this profession.
Yeah, I'll sort of drive the conversation to Lisa. The Kanan mentioned it, they're going to find those, and Gerald as well, going to find those legal innovators. And this is where the impact investment or social enterprise investors come in. What do you look into these social innovators?
So,
are we there? Yeah, okay. So we look for Gerald. That's what we look for. There's two points I want to make. First of all, you are not just surviving, you are thriving. You're in three countries now in 10 years, and that's tremendous. Of the 20 investments that we have made in rule of law type organizations, 4 of them are serving over 1 million people right now, and Gerald is one of BarefootLaw is one of those 4. So from an impact investment perspective, BarefootLaw is a huge success. It's thriving, and it's thriving because it's taken its model, iterated its model constantly, and statements like we're at 0.5% with Winnie Our goal, your goal, every 2 years, you've got a new one. And that's the kind of leadership that tends to compel impact investors to join your journey. That kind of constant iteration, that kind of, we can see, we want to solve this problem for everyone who does not have access to justice. Remember that the alternative to rule of law is violence, and nobody wants that. So for particular philanthropies to look at impact investors, to look for organizations like BarefootLaw is quite important. The other organizations that are serving more than 1 million, they're not just in the global south, they're also in the United States, which has a very faulty rule of law system, as you probably read in the newspaper every day. And every single one of those organizations who are serving more than 1 million individuals who do not have proper access to justice have some kind of data collection or data platform where they're scraping data or they're looking at the ways in which information is collected in the access to in the system, as it's often called in the United States, and pulling that data together and feeding it back out into the legal profession or to legal counsel in a way that tells a different story. So the data collection is critically important for creating a scalable structure, I think. In terms of the innovations, the stuff that I find super, super interesting, and I'm still trying to figure out a way in which to use impact investing to support it, is the Bellingcat kind of organizations. It's Prosperity for Justice, which is a new organization, that SenseMaker, which looks at patterns in storytelling. It's Forensic Architects, who are putting satellite imagery together to bring out new truths that are super important to rule of law. So you have access to justice, but then you also have, how do we protect rule of law and how do we use rule of law? Bellingcat is democratizing the way in which digital information goes into judicial systems, which you may have seen in Germany and the work that they're doing in Germany. So this kind of innovation I find super, super interesting. It is not the typical boots on the ground kind of work that impact investors tend to focus on, but it is the kind of work that's going to take the entire legal profession into the next century and help us figure out how to use new technology for good, if you will. So that's the kind of innovations that I find really interesting, though I have not figured out a way in which to bring them into the portfolio yet, but that's my own challenge.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you for all your wonderful responses. It's now time to open up the conversation to all the participants. If you have questions or if you have, any feedback from the conversation we're having, you're welcome. Feel free to speak. Is there another microphone?
I've had the privilege of knowing BarefootLaw a little bit longer, and lots of respect for where you are today and what you have done. Great. Maybe 2 questions from my side. One is, have you looked at collaboration with a law firm that is serious about innovation and innovating services, or is that the devil? And because they also are competing with Google and all the AI guys, so can you imagine a partnership with a law firm that wants to innovate? And another question I have is, in Europe there's also, for example, rising costs in the global north of all these things. We have lots of refugees here, we have homeless people. So can BarefootLaw, do you want to position yourself also as a low-cost service provider, or is that a bad thing? Is that, do you rather stay away from that? These are 2 questions I have.
Thanks, Will. It's him that taught me what a theory of change is. So I remember the first call I received from him, we had won this award, and he was asking us if we had a theory of change. And I said, I'm a lawyer, give me 1 minute. Google what a theory of change. I told him, give me 1 hour and I'll have one. And we had a theory of change in an hour. He looked at it, he's like, no, this is nonsense. Well, I know where we'll start from. So the first work we did with him for 6 months, I think, was to figure out BarefootLaw's theory of change. And that was, I think, back in the day, 2015. It's an interesting journey. Thanks for those questions. If you ask me where BarefootLaw will be in 10 years, honestly, I don't know. The world is changing too fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the front seat of a bus that's moving in the night with lights on. You only see what the lights allow you to see. So next year we may be here offering a low-cost service. I honestly don't know. If the data supports it, if the model allows an innovation in that aspect, and if the regulation allows, then I don't see why something like that is not possible. There are models we are trying out for refugees in Uganda, and I think we've worked in camps, 2 camps so far, and I think some of those would be interesting for Europe, but it's not an area we've seriously looked at. In terms of working with law firms, yes, we do work with law firms. One of our greatest partners so far is a law firm. And it's interesting what law firms want. We've tried to talk to a number of them. In the beginning, many law firms were hostile, but then I think it's now so obvious, especially post-pandemic, that technology has a role to play. Some law firms would like to place their people to get a sense of belonging. After some years, lawyers sort of, and again, it's a lesson I've learned, sorry for going there, like day follows night. If you're a lawyer, you're going to reach a point where you're going to look back at your life and ask yourself what you were able to do with your legal skill. I think I've not yet died, so I can't really say with authority, but I think at a lawyer's deathbed, one of the questions, probably they think about family, I'm not sure, but I think one of the questions they always ask themselves, especially in some years of practice, is to find a sense of belonging. Did I use my law for something meaningful, or was I drafting claims the whole of my legal career? So I've seen it with lawyers, and so with some law firms, we're trying to see a way in which we can get some of the lawyers and show them exactly what the law means and how you're able to use very basic legal knowledge to solve a problem that has been around for so many years. So that's an area we're also looking at, working with law firms.
I have a special question for all those who are working in your type of sector. It's not only BarefootLaw in Uganda or in East Africa. What we see worldwide is more and more unconstitutional changes of government. It's not only an African phenomenon, it's happening everywhere, but there's a lot of unconstitutional change of government taking place in Africa at this moment, West Africa, recently also Gabon, Central Africa, and so on. At the same time, we see that the new technologies are controlled and manipulated by governments. Internet is being cut off when there's elections and so on. How are you dealing with this in your particular environment? How do you see this evolving in the future? Because that's your business model that might be threatened to some extent.
Yeah. Thanks, Gad, for that question. Gad is a very good friend of BarefootLaw, and for years now. And I'll perhaps you'd also want to tackle it, but I'll again speak from experience. How many of you have how many of you have been in a country where internet has been cut off? How many of you have been in a country where your cell phone signal has been switched off? How many have been in a country where your plane automatically goes to airplane mode, where your phone goes to airplane mode? I've been in those. I think the first time in Uganda internet was cut off, it was possible for us to use VPNs. So we used VPNs, and that was the previous election. The next election, and so we had VPNs, we had guys outside, we had some Ugandan lawyers who would still continue posting and responding in case in Uganda we're not able to access the services. But then the second time internet was cut off, I've never felt that powerless. There is nothing. The phone was not showing signal. Someone pulled out a switch. And that's partly why we are setting up these virtual spots. Hopefully, there's a way in which lawyers who are based in some of these areas are able to provide some assistance when we've been faced with challenges like that. There's only as much as you can do. There's beyond that, it's a strange feeling. You end up, in that case when everything was cut off, the primary source of news for me was the radio, the BBC, the Voice of America. Because local broadcasts were not happening, internet was off, mobile phone signal was off. So you can only innovate in a system that allows for certain innovations. Once it's not possible, it's just not possible. The model, sometimes you also reach a point where you're like, this is it. There is nothing more you can do beyond that aspect. But again, as I conclude on that, the reason we're seeing a breakdown in the rule of law is because, from my perspective, and having lived through a country that has been in conflict, the reason we're seeing all these unconstitutional changes in government is because there's a breakdown in rule of law. Breakdown in rule of law starts when people lose trust in the justice system. People lose trust in the justice system because of ignorance and because of a lack of access. Investing in justice, investing in access to justice, investing in the law will help to give people a way in which many of these challenges can be resolved peacefully. Eventually that restores confidence in the rule of law, which in the long run will avoid situations like you're mentioning. And in fact, cases or countries where this is going down, you will see immediate funny things start happening. I look at them on the news, I'm like, we've been there. You have no idea where you're going, but it's dark. And so let's invest a lot more in access to justice. Let's invest in the law. Hopefully, access to justice, like I started, will lead to access to peace and strong institutions. We know that, but we're not investing in it.
Only to say that when a situation like this occurs, the white hackers have been enormously helpful in streaming truthful information into places in different kinds of ways, and they have a social movement structure as opposed to a firm structure or an institutional structure. So I think thinking about partnerships in a lateral fashion or more of a social movement fashion than an institutional partnership can be very helpful in keeping lines of communication open.
Do you have any other question? If not, then okay.
Hi, good afternoon, and happy birthday or happy anniversary to BarefootLaw. I'm from the International Development Law Organization, and so happy to be here with friends from BarefootLaw. And I have a question for, and I don't want to stay in the way of the party. There's a party coming up, but I have a question for Linda. Is that Lisa? Lisa, I'm so sorry. Because you mentioned rule of law, which is a bit different from access to justice and a bit different from using the law to get justice to the most vulnerable or those who need it the most. And I yeah, I mean, my question is a little around. I mean, there was a time when there was a lot of hope invested in tech as a sort of force for democratization. I mean, we remember like the Twitter revolutions and all that. So I don't know how much hope and how much does everybody, how much hope does everybody have that, yeah, tech is or can be a force for democratization.
So,
I did just fly in from San Francisco, or thereabouts, this morning, late, sorry. And one of the conversations that we had in San Francisco over 3 days was this question about polarization, democracy, rule of law, and tech. And it's a great place to have that conversation because it's in the belly of the beast, right? And we had Carol Kaltwalder, who was the reporter who broke the Cambridge Analytica story. So she was on stage talking about her imposter syndrome, because she's like, you know, I'm the B team, where was the A team when this was going on? It was a fabulous, fabulous conversation, really, really fun. And when I think about access to justice and rule of law, access to justice is like the spear point of how it interacts with people's daily lives, right? And rule of law is the fundament upon which all other rests. And it's bleak. I mean, it's bleak because the technology itself is just a tool. That's all it is. And if that tool is monopolized by a few forces, it is not going to have the kind of democratizing impact that you might like to see. And in fact, that is the case. The technology, or lots and lots of the new technologies, are owned by individuals and essentially need to be broken up. And eventually, I suspect that will happen, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And that is my own opinion. That is not DRK's opinion, for the record, but that is my opinion, is that that's where we're getting to, is a space where the monopolization of Twitter, of Facebook, of Google, of Amazon, et cetera, is going to fail the society to the point where we start seeing some regulatory moves to, what do you call that when you demonopolize things? I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, when you break them up.
Thank you very much, our panelists today. Please give them a round of applause. To round off the panel discussion, quick fire questions, so that we can go for our next performance, organized by Watoto Children's Choir from Uganda. I'll start with Lisa. If you were to go back to school now, what course would you do and why?
I would probably take a leaf from my son, my eldest son, and look at design thinking. Because design thinking and telling stories with data, for me, that is the way in which we're going to communicate with each other from now on, and I'd really love to be better at it.
Great. Gerald, if you are to choose one person to have lunch with in the world and now, who would that person be and why?
I don't want to get slapped. I think if I was to choose one person, it would be myself 10 years ago. And the reason I say that is I met someone once and it's like, you know what, if you had started BarefootLaw maybe a day later than you started it, probably the logo would have been different. The entire idea would have been different, or it wouldn't have occurred. I just want to find out for myself why I went down that path. Now that I'm looking a lot more, the more I go on this journey, the more I tend to look back.
And finally, Kanan, if you were to become magically in one language, what would that language be and why?
Because we are talking about technology and future, I'd say that language has its own barriers. So if we can understand each other's and be empathetic to each other without the use of language, by just communicating through, I don't know, mental vibrations, that would be something that I'd love to invest into or learn
Thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for joining us today and for having this conversation. The next session, we'd like to invite the Watoto choir team. They have something special for us. We've been eagerly waiting.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Yes, it's good to be in this place. My name is Sharon, and I have this awesome privilege of leading the Watoto Children's Choir. Watoto Children's Choir started traveling all over the world in 1994. And we are choir 109. Yes, we travel to share the love of Jesus and also to share the Watoto story. 39 years ago, our founders, Pastor Gary and Marilyn Skinner, have handed over leadership to Pastor Julius and Vanita. Led us on a journey to be the church in our community and not just the church. At Okello Church, we celebrate Christ and care for community. And one of the ways that we've cared for community is through one of our programs called Watoto Neighborhood. That this ministry has also partnered with us through trainings, and it is so amazing to see the vulnerable woman grow and have dignity in our community and in our neighborhood. As Watoto, it has been 15 years now that God spoke to one of our founders called Pastor Marilyn Skinner and whispered to her and told her, I want you to go and take care of my women. At that time in 2008, women were dying of HIV/AIDS, and they could not even put a plate of food on their tables to take care of themselves and their children. Yes, the medicine was there, but because they couldn't put food on their table, they were dying. So when God asked us as a ministry to start taking care of this vulnerable woman and her child, we took it up. We empower these women. First of all, we embrace them because they're vulnerable. They've gone through a lot, so we embrace them. And through embracing them, we give them a package to take home. That package has bedding, utensils, to give them hope. After that, we disciple them to get to know Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. And then we walk all these journeys with them through the session, and we train them as well. So through empowerment, we train them skills like tailoring, and they're able to make products like these, and nice bags like these, and many more. And some of the necklaces that I am wearing. We actually name these products after their name, after them. Like this one is called Skondina. After my speech, you'll watch a video, and one of the ladies is called Skondina. And all the animals have their bags because we love them and respect them and value them. We name their products after their name. Oh wow, even this one has Skondina. And then this one has Jen. Yeah, so very many women. And today we've taken care of over 6,000 women from 2008. And as a ministry, we also support their children through education, medical care. We provide all these basic needs for a child because they're from a vulnerable situation, a vulnerable home. Today we've taken care of over 900 children, and we have 3 centers. We have one in Kampala, at Watoto downtown, in the middle of the city of Kampala. And then the second one is in Bulu. Then the third one is in Juba. We love these women. We love these children. I got an opportunity of working with this ministry for 2 years during the pandemic, working with the children. These children are brilliant. Actually, one of them was among the best students in Uganda after sitting their primary leaving examination, taking him to high school. He got 5 aggregates. In Uganda, the highest there is 4 aggregates. This young man got 5 aggregates from a very poor family with a vulnerable mother. Here the boy performs very well. And for us, that is a pride, seeing what God is doing with each and every one of his children. today we've come with a number of them. There are 16 in total. And they're going to sing and worship God together with us today. Other than that, I would love to invite you to watch the video, and after which the children will come. Thank you very
much. I cried because I found my children is happy. My child is happy.
Hello, I'm Maria Namgen.
My name is Paulina. I have 3 children.
This is my mom. She has raised 12 children.
I want my children to be better than me because me, I didn't get better life. I want my children to get better future.
My husband left me with my 4 kids. I thought that we are going to die.
My mom didn't love me because she told me that my father raped her. I wasn't happy because no one loves me.
Watoto gave me a Bible and taught me how to read and how to forgive.
I learned forgiveness and I forgive my mom.
My dream is to build a house.
I have a dream for being a doctor. I will build her a very big house.
Watoto teach me tailoring, now I can sew.
Watoto told my mother to do a business.
Now I know I'm a mother, I have to work for my children. I can work with all my strength, I can work for my children.
This is Mommy's shop. She sells matoke so that we get school fees. The business is so good, she hires us people to work on her shop. When I grow up, I like to be like my mother because she is a very good businesswoman.
Watoto is empowering the mothers in our neighborhoods, not only with job skills, but also with helping their children to attend school.
I go to school now. My brother goes to Watoto. He's got a very good report. You know, I'm also a social leader. My favorite subject in class is science.
In neighborhood, I have friends. Special is my friend. Condina is my friend. Hey, is my good friend. I thank God for Watoto for making my life better than it was.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
My name is Zach. And this is what the Bible says in Psalm 113 verse 7. The Lord lifts the poor from the dirt. He takes the helpless from the ashes and places them among the princes and royalty. This is exactly what the Lord has done in all our lives. I don't know who my parents are. I was told that I was left at a guest house when I was just a baby. The local authorities found me and contacted Watoto. That's how I joined Baby Watoto. Today, I am 12 years old and I know that God has great plans for my life. No matter what the past looks like, we know that Jesus loves us. He has a special plan for our lives, and He will never leave us. Your story may be different, but Jesus is the same. He is faithful, loving, kind, and He takes care of us. He hears us when we call on Him and meets us right where we are. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am
been born again into our family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Oh, 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 you unravel me without melody. You surround me with a soul of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
I am surrounded by the arms of the Father. I am surrounded by songs of deliverance.
We've been liberated from our bondage. We're the sons and the daughters. Let us sing our freedom. Oh, 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 you split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. 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 I am a child of
You know, we all have fear in our lives. And fear has many faces. I used to be afraid of failing tests. But when Jesus came into my life, He showed me that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Friends, what are your fears? Are you worried about what's happening in the world today? Are you going through a hard time? At work, at home, or at school? Are you heartbroken? Are you facing bullies? Well, if you are scared of anything in life, we want you to remember that Jesus is bigger than any fear you may face in life. The Bible says in Joshua chapter 1 verse 9, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you will go.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michael, and for more information about Watoto, please visit our website at watoto.com. Just like any of these beautiful children, I've also grown up at Watoto, and my life has been changed because of the support from friends and sponsors all around the world. I was told I was abandoned by both of my parents shortly after I was born. And that is when Watoto took me over. And through Watoto, I was able to go to school, get basic needs, and I am the leader I am today because of the work Watoto has done in my life. And so today, I just want to encourage each one of you to sponsor a child at Watoto. We have so many profiles of children that need sponsorship. And these profiles represent a life that is being transformed so that they get to become better, responsible citizens and leaders. Through Watoto, I've seen so many lives being changed. And I was given a mother that loved me so much. And today we also came with some beautiful products. We came with some beautiful shirts, some beautiful bags. At the end, just don't forget to pass by our sponsorship and merchandise tables. Why don't you all rise up as we sing this next song? And repeat after me. We will go.
We will go.
We will go.
We will go.
Come on, say it. We will go.
We will go. Open our eyes to see the need. Open our ears to hear the cry. The broken hearted, the wounded soul. You're calling us.
Come on, say.
We will go. We will be your hands and feet. We will run. We will reach the list of peace. Share the light of the love to the ends of the earth. We will go, we will go, we will go.
Dig it, 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 yeah. Dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it. Celebrate, 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 celebrate. Come on.
Open our hearts to hear you sing.
A song of love,
a song of love, a song of peace, declaring freedom. And hope for all, you're calling us. We will go, we will be your hands and feet. We will run, we will reach the decisions. Share the light of the love to the ends of the earth. We will go, we will go, we will go.
hey, that's it,
We will go,
hey. Shout it out and say,
hey.
we will go, we will
peace. We will run, we will reach the highest of peace. Shine the light, hope and love to the ends of the earth. We will go, we will go, we will go. Hey, that's it, we will go. Hey, hey, we will go, we will go. Hey, we will go, we will go, we will go. We will go. Hey, hey, we will go, we will go. Hey, we will go, we will go, we will go.
Oh, come on, let's give it up for Jesus.
Wow, thank you very much. Hope you had a good time. All right, now I talked about our Watoto neighborhood women. So we also give them some jobs. And here with me I have Keith. So Keith is a neighborhood woman's child. She's a mother in the village. As Watoto, we also take care of children who are not part of the neighborhood program, totally orphaned children, and which most of them are, having a story of totally orphaned children. But today I came to talk about neighborhood. So we empower them through employment. So Keith's mom was a neighborhood mother, but she was given a job to take care of the children on the Watoto villages. Yes, and this is who Keith is. He goes to school, he gets medical care, and I believe he's a very happy boy. So Keith, tell us what you'd love to become when you grow up. You tell us your age, your grade, and what you'd love to become when you grow up.
I am 12 years old. I am in grade 3. When I grow up, I would love to become a pilot.
We have teachers, pilots, all these dreams. Any lawyer? None of you. They are home. Because on the village you have over 3,000 children who are totally orphaned. Now the 900 I talked about, that is from the neighborhood department. But from the totally orphaned children, orphaned as a result of war, disease, and some abandoned as babies, there are over 3,000 children. So we have quite a number of them. Yes, but God is faithful, and all the support, like Michael mentioned, is through sponsorship and partnership. Yes, so if you'd love to sponsor or partner with us in any way, we have a table over there. You can pass by and we share more. Thank you very much. May the Lord richly, richly bless you all.
Thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. So Watoto happens to be one of the partners that we work with in Uganda. So what they do is they find families who can host orphans, and then they put them in a home. And BarefootLaw trains the women who are doing business, give them legal advice, and basically training on how to basically things around legal contracts and things like that. So without wasting time, our reception platter is already waiting for us. Let's go ahead and network. We thank all our partners for making this happen. The Hague Humanity Hub, the Mental Health Hub, the Hague partners, DRK Foundation, ECDPM, all our different partners, individuals who have supported BarefootLaw over the years. Thank you so much, and we hope the next 10 years you're still going to be with us. And yeah, hopefully we will keep failing forward. But yeah, thank you very much. Let's go for that.